All right, so today we're going to be talking about the human body. So basically, what I went ahead and did, I went ahead and posted up a bunch of notes in your Schoology folder. And so basically, as we're going to be going over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be going through filling out the notes and then posting up some videos for you guys. So in case you don't know, my name's Mrs. Almanza. So I'm the science coordinator here at the school. Some of you may have seen me around whenever Coach Ritchie was teaching y'all's class, or you may have had siblings that have had me at one point. So let's go ahead and get started. So go ahead, go to your Schoology folder. You're going to open up your human body system notes. And so if you look right here, you can see it's interactive. So it says human body systems, pre-AP biology for this year. And if I go to my slides, I can see that I have some diagrams here, and I went ahead and put text boxes here. That way you can go ahead and type in here. So normally I would be handwriting these, but we're going to go through, we're just going to type them out. That way you have these notes. So first off, we need to talk about levels of organization. So when we're talking about body systems, we're talking about creating these different structures that can be dissected into really, really small pieces. And so we refer to those pieces as levels of organization. So if we start out, we can see that we have a cell here. Okay, so cells, okay, are my smallest living thing. Okay, so we've already talked about cells. We talked about cells earlier in the year. And so we also talked about the cell theory, about how cells are the smallest unit of life. You need old cells to make new cells, and they're going to be reproducing. And so cells, when we stack them all together, we're going to make something called a tissue. Okay, so tissues are just a bunch of cells all together. And you can see that right here. You can see that we have a bunch of cells all together, and that's what's going to make our tissues, like muscle tissue, skin, liver, your stomach tissue, stuff like that. So next, okay, so we have a bunch of tissues. Okay, so if we add our tissues together, we're going to be making an organ. Okay, so organ, this is a stomach that's pictured here, but there's a lot of types of organs. We have, like I said, stomach, your intestines, your brain, your bones, things like that. And then all of your organs together will create an organ system. And so we're going to be going over all the different types of organ systems as this unit progresses. So right here, I'm actually going to type in organs, and I forgot to put a box for organ systems. So I'm going to put organs lead to organ systems. All right. And then from there, all of our organ systems combine together to create an organism, okay, which is us. Okay, so it could be us, it could be a plant, it could be an animal, all things that are living, as long as they're multicellular, so having many cells, have different systems that make up how it functions. Even the most simple organisms have organ systems. They may not look the same as our organ systems, but they have specialized cells that work together for a purpose. So our first system that we're going to actually talk about is the nervous system. Okay, so my class went ahead and voted, and they opted for learning a little bit more about some of the systems. And so these are some of the first ones that I have here. So the nervous system is something that a lot of the students, in my class were really interested in. And so hopefully y'all will be interested as well. So if we're talking about our nervous system, let's go ahead and talk about our main function. Okay, so our main function for our nervous system is to control movement. Okay, so we're controlling movement, through using neurons and impulses that travel throughout our body. Okay, so it's going to control our movements, allows, wow, I can't type, us to respond to stimuli, and then it also helps us maintain homeostasis. Okay, so those are all things that our nervous system does. Okay, so it controls our movements, our thought processes, what we're thinking about. We can respond to stimuli. So for example, if we touch something that's really hot or something that's really sharp, we're going to move back really quickly. And then also maintaining homeostasis, which is really, really important. And so if we're looking at our nervous system, we have these specialized cells here that are called a neuron. And so these neurons what's it called? So if we're looking at our neuron right here, we have different parts to this neuron. And so, what's it called? We're going to just go ahead and, match what goes where. And so for our neuron, okay, so this actually should say neuron nucleus. Okay, so go ahead and type in nucleus right there. Okay, so in our neuron, I'm going to just drag and drop this little text box right here. Okay, so this right here, this little green blob, that's my nucleus for my neuron. Okay, neurons are cells, so they're going to have nuclei. That way, the nucleus can tell them, how to form and what to do and things like that. Up here, where we have these little tree branches, okay, those are actually called dendrites. I'm going to drag and drop dendrites right there. And according to this definition, okay, so this is where we're receiving incoming messages. And so normally you would have a bunch of neurons all strung together. And so the dendrites on this end are actually going to be pretty close to these little orange things on the other end. And those are actually called, okay, our synaptic terminal. And I know that text box doesn't fit very well. Okay, but our synaptic terminal is where our neurotransmitters are released. And so those neurotransmitters will be released and they'll actually go over to those dendrites. And then the last thing, right here, my myelin sheath. Okay, so my myelin sheath actually coats that neuron and it's going to insulate this axon. That way you can speed up impulse transmission. And so the myelin, the presence or absence of that myelin is what makes gray matter or white matter. Sometimes you may hear about, your brain being, gray matter or white matter, and it's because you either have myelin or you don't. And there are certain parts of the brain that are myelinated, and there are certain parts that aren't. All right. So for talking about our nervous system, okay, so we actually have two different types of nervous system. So we have one called a CNS and one called a PNS. And so over here on the left, I have some more drag and drop words. And again, I know these blanks are really, really small, so I know they're not going to fit, but we'll just do our best. So our CNS first is our central nervous system. Okay, so my central nervous system doesn't fit very well. Okay, so our central nervous system is going to be our main nervous system. Usually when we think about our nervous system, we're thinking about our brain. Okay, so our brain is part of our central nervous system. Okay, and then also our spinal cord. Okay, so our spinal cord is actually also part of our nervous system. So those two things are part of our central nervous system. So our brain is what allows for our thought processes and us to respond. And then our spinal cord does have a lot of nerves that attach to it. That way we can make really quick responses. So if I look down here, okay, oops. Okay, so I can see my spinal cord just goes on down and all these nerves, which are all in blue, are attached to my spinal cord. So that's part of my central nervous system. I also have my PNS, which is my peripheral nervous system. So right here. So in my peripheral nervous system, okay, I can divide this up even more. I have a somatic nervous system and an autonomic nervous system. So my somatic nervous system is over my skeletal muscles. So I can choose whether or not to move my skeletal muscles. Okay, and we'll talk about those types of muscles when we talk about muscular system. So my somatic nervous system is voluntary. I can move my body around. So I can choose whether or not to do that. Okay, so that's somatic. Involuntary movements are the ones I can't control. Okay, so for example, okay, so our smooth and cardiac muscles, I can't control whether or not my stomach is going to digest whatever I ate for lunch. It's going to do it automatically. I also can't control my heart, to make it beat faster, to beat slower. Like I can't think, okay, heart muscle, you need to start beating faster. That doesn't work that way. And so our autonomic nervous systems are all involuntary. They're going to happen regardless. So the last thing that I went ahead and put on here, I went ahead and put a cross section of the brain so you can just kind of see what makes up this part of the brain. And so you can see we have our cerebrum. Okay, so the cerebrum is the gray matter that's over the white matter. It makes up both halves of our brain. We also have the thalamus, which is right in the middle. Okay, that's the main center where our sensory and motor information pass through. We have a brainstem and a hypothalamus. Those two things help maintain homeostasis. Corpus callosum, okay, that allows for communication between the right and the left side of the brain. And then I also have this portion down here, and for whatever reason, my little camera screen is blocking it, but that's my cerebellum. And so my cerebellum helps us with balance and coordination. And that's also why sometimes if you hit the back of your head, you may feel out of balance. It's because your cerebellum's right back here, and that's what that helps with. So hopefully these notes were easy and quick to understand. Go ahead and email me if you have any questions. And tomorrow we're going to go over a new set of body systems.